Are you wondering how to build a multi-six-figure Etsy shop with your spouse or partner? Or maybe how to do it without killing each other? So what is the reality of building a multi-six-figure Etsy shop with children and a family? Today, I have my husband, Wes, here, and we are diving into how we make over $40,000 a month on Etsy. So who are we?
So I actually have a full-time job. I'm active duty in the Navy, stationed here in San Diego, California. I'm a submarine officer, so I was stationed on a submarine and would go out to sea anywhere from 6 months at a time to 2 to 3 week underways in local areas. So lots of time away from home, really long hours. A lot of my days I would be working from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and I wouldn't get home until the kids were already in bed.
And now I am a full-time Etsy business coach, but I still have my shop. We do around $400,000 a year.
And I have a full-time second job.
So I am a full-time Etsy business coach, but we still have our Etsy shop. It's about 7 years old, and we've done over $1.4 million in revenue, over $1 million in profit. We also have 2 kids and no family around. Together with all of our businesses, we gross around $300,000 to $400,000 a month. And with Etsy, it's really anywhere between $30,000 to $50,000 a month of that. So how do we do that as a team? Let's maybe talk about how it started. So our Etsy business is really the first business that we ever did together, and we started it in the summer of 2016, which is the same summer that we got married. So I had this idea of something I wanted to make for our wedding. I saw it on Pinterest, but I had no idea how to make this thing. So we went to the dollar store together and we picked out some foam and some toothpicks and we got to work. And Wes really was the engineer of this. So Wes cut this foam down and stuck it together with toothpicks to make it in the shape of a J. After our wedding, we had a photo of this thing and we put it on Etsy, just a listing with one photo, just to see if anyone wanted to buy it. A couple months later, we got an email notification right before we left for our honeymoon, and it said, boom, you have an Etsy sale, congratulations. And we were like, wait, we have an Etsy shop? But we were kind of scrambling because we had to figure out how to make this thing. We hadn't actually figured out how to manufacture this item because the current model that we had was made out of foam and toothpicks, and there was no way that that would, withstand shipping.
But we figured it out. So we couldn't find the materials that we needed. So we had to order it online where it was shipped to the local Walmart, and we picked it up a week later. So for version number 2, we actually bought a $30 jigsaw, and using the jigsaw and some wood from Home Depot, I was able to cut the item that she needed out of the wood, just using the jigsaw, a table that we already had to put the wood on our apartment complex patio. After a while, our neighbors were not thrilled with our woodworking pastime, so had to figure out how to take the show on the road, and we bought a small generator off of Amazon.com, put it in the back of our truck, and using a folding table, we took all the supplies we needed and we found a quiet spot in a cul-de-sac by a fuel farm, and that's where I set up shop, and I would go there probably 3 to 4 times a week and cut out the materials that she needed for her Etsy business.
So what that did, he's cutting this stuff along the highway, but it really got our costs down from about $12 to $15 per item down to about like $5. So after about a year of doing this, we realized that was not scalable. He was about to go back to sea and I was going to be alone. So there's no way I could be jigsawing with a baby and being home alone, in our garage doing this all day. So we were moving into a brand new house in a strict HOA neighborhood, and we knew we had to be conscientious of noise. So we looked at CNC machines and lasers. Based on the noise factor, we went with the laser option. So we didn't start small. We jumped right into a $14,000 laser. I was a little bit nervous about this, but Wes was pretty sure. He had researched it pretty well. He said, no, we'll recoup the cost, and we did.
So once we had our laser, we had to figure out how to assemble it, how to connect it to the computer, and how to actually design the files that we needed to cut from the laser. All of that sounds a little simple, but it took probably a week to do that. Really long hours, lots of trial and error, lots of phone calls. But the important thing was we just kept going and we're finally able to get our first letter cut. And I will never forget the relief on both of our faces once we had the item cut that we needed.
Yeah, so this was about 2 months before we were moving across the country, 2 months before he was deploying on a submarine. So we had to figure this out pretty quickly because at that point we were doing over $200,000 a year in revenue. I felt like I wanted to keep that volume up while he was gone. So this was the only path to really do that. So in our first year on Etsy, we did about 134,000. The next year we did about 143. The third year we had done about 245. So at this point, we're moving back to San Diego. He's about to go on deployment on a submarine, and we took the laser back to San Diego with us. But what did that mean for the business? Wes had already been very, very involved in the business up until this point. But at this point, I was kind of have to be doing this solo. So when we got back to San Diego, Wes went full-time on the submarine, and it was really hard.
Fortunately, we had spent the month before we moved pre-cutting some of the items that we needed. So we had a bunch of supply already built up, and using that, Dylan was able to get through that month where I was gone when we first showed up until we could get the laser set up again, and I was back in San Diego and able to help out again.
So we never put the shop on vacation mode. We were literally working out of hotel rooms, shipping out of hotel rooms. It was pretty crazy, but I mean, we made a lot of money, and I think it was worth it. So prior to deployment, we had to do a lot to prepare for Wes being gone because he put a lot into this business. So he filled up an entire guest room full of pre-made shipping boxes, right?
Yep. We ordered a bunch of things that required some assembly that I normally did. So I did several $1,000s worth of just kind of putting all the materials together so that it was ready to go and for Dylan to work on. And then I had to do all of the steps that I would do with the laser and try to make sure that I explained it well and I wrote things down so that Dylan would be able to operate the laser and all the other steps that I did with the business.
So literally like up to the night before he left, we were in bed. I was videotaping him, showing me on the computer what to do with the laser software. It was like a 10-minute video. I was so frantic inside because if I couldn't figure this out, there was no one else to figure it out. So that was very stressful. Failure really was not an option. So before deployment, there's oftentimes a stand down period for sailors to spend time with their families. Now during that time, people are relaxing, having quality time. Wes is like working like a crazy person, staying up till like midnight, getting completely exhausted, helping prepare the business for his time being gone. Literally up until the last second, he is hustling, helping prepare us for that 6 months of no Wes.
When we left for deployment, our garage was completely full of materials, and Dylan would tell me sometimes afterwards that she would go out to the garage and she would see all of the preparation that we had put in together for me being gone on deployment, and it would bring tears to her eyes because she felt taken care of. It really was a team effort between the two of us to get everything that had to be done kind of planned and as much done as possible so that it was ready for Dylan to work on.
Yeah, we literally got like over $50,000 of inventory before this deployment. He just made sure that I was so set up for success here. We didn't even realize that we were going to grow from 245 to 360,000. But if he had not set me up in this way, it wouldn't have been possible. So we got settled back in San Diego with the business. Now we're heading into 2020, and Wes is about to go on his first big deployment right before COVID starts. He left in February, got back in August, so he missed, everything.
Yeah, I had no idea what Dylan was facing while I was underway. The first time that I kind of came up for air and was able to find out what had happened, it was a huge shock to find out everything that Dylan had to go through all by herself in a global pandemic while running a multi-six-figure Etsy business with a small kid.
Yeah, so during that time, my only employee who did all of my packaging for me, she actually moved to Hawaii. She was also in the military. As soon as Wes left, there was no contact. So months without email, no phone. He had no idea what was going on. And in, March, April, May, as the government started sending out all these checks, the Etsy business really exploded. So we went from 245,000 the year before up to 360,000. And it was really tough. To go from, 245 to 360 with losing Wes and losing our employee, it was really tough. So most nights, I was staying up till 11:30 at night. My goal was always to be in bed at midnight, but sometimes that didn't happen. I'd put the babies to bed, I'd come downstairs, get to work. I'd usually put on some kind of a church sermon. It was completely dark out. I could see all the neighbors going to bed, but I always kept thinking about Wes on the submarine. He oftentimes had, the night shift.
Yeah, I usually stood watch from about midnight to 8 o'clock in the morning. So that was kind of my time that I was awake during, a different time zone, obviously, but it was called the mid-watch, standing watch over the evening time.
So as I'm, getting to work after the baby goes to bed, I'm just imagining, he's getting up, getting started with his work shift as well. But I just felt such a sense of teamwork because I knew he was working really, really, really hard, doing really hard things. And I felt, kind of a responsibility to do that myself as well, to keep things running at home and to take advantage of the huge opportunity in sales. And part of this story that we don't really tell people is that we actually almost got out of the military before this, but the whole reason we had stayed in was so that we could get this home port guarantee to come back to San Diego to run this business. We had a lot of advantages to being in Southern California for running this business, and this business was a big reason that he stayed in for a couple more years in the military at that point. So I felt just a big responsibility to take advantage of that and to make it really, really worth it because I knew how hard this was on him. Literally the week before Wes got back, I was like running around with my hair on fire trying to keep up with these orders. But the week before he got back, the laser lid completely busted off of the hinges. Like the hinges completely snapped and the whole thing fell on me when I was lifting it up to get something out of it. Luckily, my mom was visiting at the time, but I was like trying to get my phone to call her and I was like yelling because I was stuck under the laser. It was like on top of me. And this thing is like the size of a small car. This laser it's not a Glowforge. He got back luckily a week later and day one, he starts fixing things, replaces the bulb, replaces the hinges, like gets right to work the minute he gets back. But I think he was like pleasantly surprised by what had happened when he was gone.
Yeah, Dylan did an amazing job of keeping everything running. She had to find somebody to help with the laser, just to do an alignment of the laser, which we were kind of hoping that we wouldn't have to do while I was gone, but she figured out how to get somebody to come out and help with that. And then just the amount of business. Our goal before I left was just keep everything running. We weren't trying to set any records.
Oh my gosh.
We were just trying to get through deployment, and then we'll figure it out once I get back, and then we can go back to growing. But it wasn't like we were trying to grow the business.
No.
This was just an opportunity that Dylan saw and just was like, I'm going to go seize this opportunity.
Our goal for that year was $100,000. So the fact that we did 360 is insane. But from that point on, Wes was back and he didn't have to go on a deployment again after that, but we still continued to, run the business together. He reassumed some of his roles. So even though he was still on the submarine, he got back to work doing his night shift, for the Etsy shop. It's really interesting because I don't think many people knew what he was doing when he wasn't at work. It was kind of something that you kept pretty private, but this is a huge part of his life.
I didn't publicly advertise a lot of times that I was, working so hard in the evenings, and I would talk about it with people that I was close with. On the boat, I try to keep things a little bit more professional and amongst the closer people that I talked to, then I would be more open with how things were going and just the incredible success that was happening with the business that Dylan had started. When you're sometimes working on a business, a lot of times it can be very, very lonely. There's not a lot of people out there. We found in our own lives sometimes that you can't really talk to other people like, hey, wow, I just had sold $2,000 of sales today. Other people don't really get that. They're like, hey, I watched this TV show tonight. What did you think? And we're like,
did you see
what?
The game last night? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, poor Wes. When was the last time you watched a football game?
Probably prior to meeting you, Dylan. But that's okay. And it's something that's been really fun for us to do together. And this is something that we just are really passionate about and is exciting to us as we continue to grow our business. And that's the thing I think that people don't really get sometimes is they're willing to do their Etsy shop, but they don't want to give up TV or they don't want to spend a weekend working on something. And that's just something that we kind of think we just grew together over by working on it together.
The delayed gratification thing is huge for us. We are willing to make short-term sacrifices, like unbelievable ones, to grow this business. We're a bit aggressive and we kind of feed off each other. We kind of both have that no quit mentality. That can be good and bad because we really never stop. We kind of are go, go, go nonstop. It's really, we fuel each other too. We motivate each other because we both have that same mentality. Like, there's no way one of us would go to bed before the other one if someone's working on the business. It's like, what can I do to help?
So if you're thinking about starting an Etsy business, or maybe your significant other, your spouse is starting an Etsy business, it's not just something I would encourage you to think of as something that they're doing. It's something that you can be a part of. And unfortunately, most often what that looks like isn't something that's really cool. Sometimes that's like, hey, I'm going to do all the bath times for the kids tonight. I'm going to make the dinner and do the dishes tonight instead of whatever your normal routine is. But it's not sexy. It's not really cool. But that's really what it comes down to is, hey, what do you need? How can I meet a need for you without you even having to ask me? I think we're both kind of that way of you just see what the other person needs and then you try to meet that need before they have to ask you about it.
So if your goal with your shop is to make it something that is multi six figures or, beyond, I definitely recommend being on the same page with your spouse about what sacrifices you're willing to make that happen, because it could be a rude awakening. If one of you is willing to, give up all your nights and weekends for this and the other one thinks this is just going to be a fun little 1 hour a day side hustle, you want to be on the same page. And one way that we really stay on the same page building this business together is being in alignment with our goals. We really see this as a vehicle to build the future that we want together. So for us, a lot of that has been real estate. That's his big thing. So when Etsy can fund those real estate deals, yeah, of course he's gonna love it, right? So whether you intend for it to be a we thing or not, if you wanna go really, really big, it is going to affect everyone in your family, and you wanna make sure that everyone's on board.
And if your significant other is thinking about doing something like that, this is a huge opportunity to grow closer together in a lot of ways as you work on it together with them. And even if it's not the actual act of making the product or shipping the product or the fun things, just those simple things of being a part of it, having a goal that you're working on together was something that, we've never regretted any of the time that we have spent. And I promise it is not always fun. There's been so many nights. There's been troubleshooting the laser, in tears as we were, staying up till midnight trying to get the laser to work correctly. Or
who was crying though? Who was crying?
You were crying.
So yeah, building a business is very high stress. So it's not all, sunshine and rainbows. It's been tough, but having the same end goal for the life that we want to build is the one thing that's kind of kept us motivated at the same level. So if you like this video and you like seeing my husband on here, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, because he is also a big part of this business, this coaching business now. And if you want to see another video with Wes, we'd love to have him back, right? So please subscribe and maybe he'll come back.
Sounds great. So if you need help and you're ready to take those next steps to get to that multi-six-figure level and you're serious about it and this is something that you really want to do, reach out. You can find Dylan, Dylan Jarvis at Instagram. You can email her, team@dylanjarvis.com. Also, there's a podcast produced by yours truly. It's Secrets of $1 Million Etsy Seller. So you can also check us out there.
All right. See you in the next video.